Check one, check two. It's G from the Academy bringing you another short presentation on whatever is happening around about us. What do you think is going on? Yeah? What's your opinion? Are you keyed in? Are you focused? Do you care? Is there anyone out there? Hmm. So, hello from a cold and windy Lossiemouth. It was really warm for the first part of the day. Here's something that not a lot of people are thinking about, right? And it fits into this model of how I think climate affects people's behavior. Climate affects what people do. Climate even affects people's opinions. If you think about work, a lot of work is related to whatever is in your environment, which is a result of the climate. In this part of Scotland, a lot of whiskey is produced, and that's because maybe you hear the kids shouting out in the background. Um, that's because we have the environment for it. Think about agriculture and farming. You need a certain kind of environment to produce your crops or your fruit or whatever needs to be harvested. So, so it was pointed pointed out to me today that people are complaining, querying, I think is a better word, questioning why foreigners are questioning why British people need to go out. And I'll explain why British people need to go out, to go outside, because we live, especially in the north of Scotland, in a temperate maritime climate, which means that the temperature's not really, there's not really a huge difference between summer and winter. Winter's a bit colder, summer's a bit hotter. But if you look at the average temperature throughout the year, there's only about 5 or 6 degrees difference across the average throughout the year. It's crazy, but that's the way that it works. And so this is not, in other places that I've lived in the world, you can wake up in the morning and you can look outside and you can see it's gonna be a beautiful day. You can see the crystal clear blue sky, and you know that you can go out at any point in time. It's going to be great. You can plan your day, you can plan your journey, you can plan your adventure. It's going to be cool. But this part of the world is not like that. In this part of the world, you've got to grab the moment when you can. You've got to grab the weather when you can. Because remember, it's an island in this specific part of the island, we're battered from from all sides by different weather fronts, and and so you've got to grab it while it's there. You got to grab it and make it yours, and and so when you wake up in the morning and there's a clear blue sky, you got to go out and grab that because it'll be there for 2, maybe 3 hours, and then it'll be gone, and you don't know what's going to happen then because it might rain for the next 2 weeks non-stop in the middle of summer. I've been in this part of the world through summer and experienced 5 days of sunshine. 5 days of sunshine, the whole summer, right? And I've been in other places in the world where summer is summer, right? I mean, it's just like 3 months of sun. And I've been in places where winter is winter, like 3 months of snow. So that's one of the reasons why the British people need to go out when they can go out. And people are complaining, oh, they all go out at the same time. Well, they have to because they all live in the same place, and when that weather at that point in time is pleasant, because it doesn't really get too hot here, which is why British people love to travel and visit the Mediterranean and other warm parts of the world, because you just don't get it here, and people don't really understand it. It affects everything. Like I could live in Central Eastern Europe and I could have like shorts and t-shirt on for 3-4 months during the summer and know that I didn't need to wear anything else. In this part of the world, you could pretty much wear trousers and a jumper all the time and you'd be comfortable, right? Now, saying that, people who've lived here their whole lives and don't have a grand experience of traveling and different cultures, or maybe they do, but they still have lived here most of their life, they can, you'll see them in the shorts and t-shirt all year, right? It'll be it'll be almost 0 degrees in winter, and there'll be people walking around in shorts and t-shirt. The kids will be playing out in the park in shorts and t-shirt because that's what's normal for a lot of people here. Crazy but true. And you also get the microclimates here as well, which are really interesting. Like from where I am right now in this little bedroom studio, which is what it is, I can see across the Spey Bay Murray Firth area. And what I can see is I can see where the rain falls and where the sun shines. And there are these incredible microclimates here where if you go 5 miles or less down the coast, what you will encounter is rain most of the time. But if you stay here, you can watch the rain falling in other places, but it doesn't fall here. It's really interesting. So I never really thought that much about where I lived before. I was aware that some places were sunnier than other places, and I was specifically aware of things like that when I looked at renting flats and buying flats when I lived out in Slovakia, and when I looked at buying a house out there. A lot of people would like get their map and it'd be like, okay, where is it? And where's the sun going to be in the morning? And where does the sun set? And how much light are you going to get at various points? And people would actually calculate that. I never really thought about that much before, but people would actually sit and calculate how many hours of sunshine, direct or indirect, their property would get, and they would value the property based on the number of hours of sunshine. Really interesting. Um, and of course, then understanding that sun makes a difference to your health is very important. Of course it does. Of course, it's the most powerful thing in our universe. It's why we're here, basically. Apart from the fact our mothers and fathers met. So, that's why understanding your environment is important. That's why looking around is important. That's why realizing what is happening is important, and realizing that you have different habits in different places, and that's okay, because we need to have those habits because of the climate and the culture that exists there. We need to have that. So moving forward, oh, and also just before I jump into what I want to do, look around wherever you are in the world. Look around you, and look at what you see. Look at what you see. Is everything okay? Are the people happy? Are they sad? Are they nervous? Are they quiet? Are they loud? What's going on? It's a very interesting time to be an observer of people and to try to gauge and understand what is happening around about. So, diving in to Twitter today, by the way, I'm G. This is the Academy where we try to study and learn together. Find me under Graham William Hendry on Facebook. Find me on Twitter. Find the Academy of Language Therapy and Life Coaching specifically on YouTube while the accounts are still up, because I like to push the borders and boundaries of understanding and information, and I've had my strikes, right? There's certain information that perhaps not everybody is ready for, so I understand that. I understand that it's a game. It's all a game, just like the Beatles sang in "All You Need Is Love." Um, it's a game, but you can learn the rules. It's easy. Yeah, they understood. They understood what was happening. They understood because they were part of the system as well. Do you think the Beatles wrote all their own music? Do you think the Beatles wrote all their own songs? You think the Beatles played the instruments on all of their tracks? There's some tracks that are recorded by the Beatles that have no Beatles playing on it at all whatsoever. Fact. I kid you not. I kid you not. Absolute truth. So it's interesting what we are able to sell to people. It's interesting what the system is able to sell to the public. The rock and roll um, revival of culture that followed World War II, where people needed to get back into society and culture and life and feel good about the world and express themselves, and that's where rock and roll came from. And it's also where the solo individual dance came from as well, which dancing wasn't like that. When you danced with people. You danced holding hands. You danced as part of a group. Um, I knew this growing up, and if if you've been involved in sort of the part one of those cultures, European cultures where that teaches sort of classical dances, then you understand that that's always been a part of the culture there, right? But if you grew up in the disco rave culture, which was all, people dancing basically alone most of the time, then you've got to realize that, well, it wasn't always like that. That began with rock and roll. Before that, dances were group activities, or you were in a pair, or you're part of a group, or a threesome, or whatever, and you joined in the dance, and it was a big social gathering, and an event, a place to meet, a place to communicate. Well, that was replaced with rock and roll, everything being loud and everybody dancing on their own. Um, it was something different. It was something new. It was also something engineered by the men in the men in hats behind the curtain, right? By the behaviorists and social engineers who were experimenting with cultures. What's possible? What can we do? What can we what what can we change? What can we transform? How malleable are people? They studied it. Um, they wrote books about it. Go and read the books about what uh, was it the Frankfurt Institute and the Tavistock Institute, I believe, were highly involved in culture creation. It was a thing. It was a real thing that went on. Culture creation, the creation of a cult, um, a movement that people would follow. And what we've seen recently is pretty much a stagnation in culture. Well, a classic example of that would be where first of all, where's postmodernism taken us, right? I don't think it's taken us very far. First point. Second point, let's take music, right? So I live in Britain, and there was, say, 20 years ago, a movement of Britpop, but nothing much has really evolved since that point. So we're pretty stagnant, still waiting for something new, which is not completely, totally electronic. And we've also seen reductionism in music as well, where once upon a time music was played by larger groups and orchestras and folk musicians. But what happened through time is that it got reduced and reduced and reduced until you had the band with four people in it, and then it got reduced and the instruments got reduced and it got simplified, and all the way down to drum and bass, and it became just drum and bass, and that was it. I mean, you couldn't simplify it anymore, because then you just end up with bass, or you end up with just drum, and that you couldn't really justify that as some kind of musical genre. Um, so it was very interesting. It's very interesting how it was simplified and how it was then packaged, presented, and sold to people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We need something to hold on to. We need something to hang on to. And music for a lot of people is and was that. You know, if you had a tough childhood, you probably turned to music as a way of relating to people, or not relating to people, and finding your own little space. Yeah, whether it was this sort of the shoegazing styles of the 80s and 90s, um, or whether you try to express yourself through music as well. So it's interesting that all those elements when you place and put them together, and a lot of that culture is very much it's very much created. There's very 'cause people forget that behind the scenes we've got universities and marketing companies and touring companies, and don't get me wrong, there's an underground as well. There's people doing things alternatively, but then what is alternative to alter the native, right? So that's we want to think that we're on the cutting edge, but we don't want to lose where we came from, because if we completely alter the native, then we're gonna we're gonna lose touch with our history, and that's what a lot of culture has done. It transforms and changes us and disconnects us slightly from the past. Of course, the greater elements of it transcend, right? Transcend. It doesn't matter whether it's a piece of Beethoven or Stravinsky that's transcended down through the generations, or a piece of some jazz music by Ella Fitzgerald, or what would be, I don't know, ABBA, I guess, would be some kind of modern example of that, where pretty much today it's still considered classic pop. Although for some people it would just be rubbish. That's the way it goes. It's nice to have choices, though. I mean, it's nice to have choices in the modern world. There used to be all this hype about if you copied something, that copying is pirating and that's not good. But there was when I was a kid, you copy tape to tape and you would share it, and that's how knowledge of things grew. That's the way people communicate. That's the way things work. That's the way things grow. Microsoft understood this with their computing technology, because what they did essentially was allow people to copy their software. What it was done in a sort of roundabout way. They didn't want people to copy their software, but they created software that could be copied. So when I say they didn't want, it's like, well, we know what's going to happen anyway, and that's what people did. They were able to copy it and share it and pass it on to other people, and eventually the virus of Windows spread like wildfire, and it was everywhere. So it's it's interesting to try to put all the bits and pieces of history together to understand what's built the culture that we're in, and what then creates cultural wars and cultural conflicts. Um, like, it's nice to have all these different varieties of music and elements available, but then that also, you don't want to let that segregate you. You don't want to, I don't know, I don't know, just end up stuck in a corner speaking to people who only listen to the same kind of music that you listen to. Although when I went to school, that's kind of pretty much what happened, really. Um, and also, sharing and copying, that spread the good music. It was said, oh, it's going to destroy the music industry. It just made it grow. It just made it grow because more people heard more music, more choice was available. As technology became more available to people, they were able to record and create the music and spread it, and to the point where we almost have Actually, you almost have too much of it now, right? It's not enough time. I mean, how does that even figure into things? Is that overload? Is that overload on purpose or just overload because that's just the way it turned out, right? There's not enough time. There's not enough time to read all the great books. There's not enough time to listen to all the great albums. There's not enough time to visit all the great places. There's not enough time to try to speak to everybody we want to speak to. Right? That all plays into how we can have successful lives, understanding that even freedom, to understand freedom, we still require some element of limitation there. Because if we have just this, excuse me, if we have just this free and open society where everything goes, then can we live without rules? I don't think we can. I mean, you can't live without rules any more than you can have a game without rules. And you definitely can't have a game with people playing to different rules. So there's got to be something there, and and everybody's idea of what's normal is different. So you have to communicate about that. We have to communicate. We have to do that, and that's kind of the core and one of the keys that becomes ever more important as we go through life. So dropping in, boom, on Twitter right now and checking out what the conversations are. Excuse the rant. Excuse my rant. Excuse my rant. I wonder where the rants come from. You know, I wonder where the rants. Let me, and I will get into it, but I want to talk about this just because it just pops into my head. I've never been a person that really had a lot of long conversations with other people. Yet, because I never really thought that I had much to say. A lot of thoughts, but I didn't really have much to say about a lot of things. Just wanted to let people be. And about 2 years ago, I was at a small meeting of different businesses, and I was asked to stand up and talk about the work that I do. And so I took the microphone and I stood in front of this group of people, and I just began to talk about my work. And of course, it's just like it's meant to be like your elevator pitch, 30 seconds of why you're important and why people should communicate with you and work with you and do business with you. And yeah, I could do that, but I don't think that's real, to be honest. I don't think the elevator pitch is anything that's real. But it's good to be able to concisely communicate what you do to other people, but that doesn't really communicate the whole picture. But I get the elevator pitch. Or as my partner said that the elevator pitch is kind of redundant because everybody knows it's better to take the stairs, or at least it's healthier. So there you go. So what's the point? The point is I was talking, and I just talked and talked and talked, and I think somebody had to like grab the mic and tell me to sit down after about 10 minutes, because when there is something important, when there is something interesting, when you can actually help people and you're passionate about helping people, you just flow, and it I don't know where it comes from, just comes out. And I think everybody's kind of got that within themselves. Everybody's got that zone in which they can communicate. Everybody's got the information that they are knowledgeable about. There's certain techniques that you can use to help you. If you're interested in improving your presentation skills, your communication skills, how you present ideas, I would say that a lot of the time, if you're doing a solo presentation, it's good to imagine that you're talking to yourself, and imagine the kind of questions that you would ask yourself. That maybe sounds a bit crazy, but I think that's what helps me in terms of presentation, is still imagining that it's a conversation, because there's going to be questions that anyone listening naturally has. Some of them you will answer, some of them you won't. That's the way it goes. But it helps me when I imagine talking to myself, and I'm pretty inquisitive person, so I then try through the conversation to imagine the kind of questions that would be asked and try to fill in some details of the information around whatever topic it is. So that's what I do sometimes. Right. So now we got that out of the way, sort of. Diving into Twitter. Let's see. From the insane to the completely insane. Golf courses to open today with restrictions in certain parts of the world. One of the new rules is that holes must be filled with foam so your ball cannot technically go into the hole. This is to avoid touching surfaces. Okay, isn't the whole point of golf like to get the ball in the hole? Isn't this just slightly childish? This would be like, well, I don't know. Wouldn't this be like putting a piece of wood over the basketball rim so the ball didn't completely go in or something? It's um, you know, we don't live in normal times. I, kind of leaves me speechless. But there we go. Moving on, Lionel Media pointed out that CNN is still pumping out fake news. Screenshot of their main news programs says global death toll from COVID-19 approaches 3 million people. I mean, that's just a completely insane and untrue statistic. And they have to know that they're doing it. They have to know that they're doing it. Now, the question is, um, are they doing it because they deliberately want to misinform people? Are they doing it because they want to confuse people? Are they doing it because they know someone will see it and then talk about their channel? Um, I don't know. I mean, we can surmise the reasons behind it, but we can't actually really know. The funny thing is that at the bottom of the screen they've got global death toll, 3 million people, and at the side they've got global death toll now 206,000, including people who've died from gunshot wounds and the elderly who are going to die anyway, and those with pre-existing conditions, and on and on. Talked about that before. The statistics are being manipulated, and that's why it's hard to believe anything everywhere, and that's why you've got to look around you. You've got to look at what's happening in your environment. You want an experiment, you want to do something out there, you want to know more, take a trip to your local hospital, right? See what's happening there. Um, Try to get into your local hospital. You go to the car park and see if the car park's full, right? Go into your, I'm not saying bother people, I'm just saying investigate a little bit. You um, just have a look. Just have a look. See, how how real is real. You got to have that experience so that you know. So, um, also in the news today was that Boris Johnson's partner, Boris Johnson, British Prime Minister, who's a little bit off the radar at the moment. I don't know if that's intentional or unintentional. You can't really tell what's happening behind the scenes. Um, day one, you get this information, and you're like, okay, this is it. I know it. Day two, you get completely contradictory information. You're like, okay, so day one was wrong. Day two, day three, you get another set of information. You're like, oh my god. So it's just confusion, and it's designed to be confusing. It's designed to be confusing. As I've said before, Steve Pachenik, former military operative for the Pentagon and the American government, said that part of the job of military intelligence is just to put out fake information consistently so that nobody actually knows what's going on. And there's no rule or law that says the media has to tell the truth. There's no rule or law that says that journalists have to tell the truth, right? Sometimes they get into trouble for certain elements of certain stories, but who's to know what is true? Who's to know, right? It's all based on trust. It's all based on trust, and how much can you trust someone or some system that that is going to lie to you because they have lied to you? How much can people trust the BBC, which was run by pedophiles for 20 to 30 years? I mean, how much can an organization like that be trusted? Yes, well, it was only one or two people. Yeah, but that's all it takes, right? That's all it takes. It's absolutely crazy. When the head of children's television, the main presenter of children's television, was a known fiddler, right? Known by people in the organization. Uh, that people used to sit their families and their children down to watch this person, right? And then and it's odd with hindsight, looking back and you see the old videos of the shows, you're like, there's something not right about that guy. Trust your gut, right? There's something not right about that guy. If you're watching something, you're like, there's something not right about that. It's probably not. There's a lot of the time you go, not important, whatever. But it's the human instinct far more powerful than we can ever imagine, right? It's probably what's got us this far because we've we've messed around with logic so much that well, it's logical to do this, logical, yeah, yeah, really, even logic can be manipulated, so we have to be really careful. Anyway, and people don't know the background to things. People don't know the back. Do you know what the Hellfire Club was? Do you know what that was? Do you know who was in it? Do you know what they did? Right? Do you, right? The things that people don't know. Where I am right now, I'm I live about 10 miles away from one of the most exclusive private schools in the world, and most people don't know about it. They don't know it's there, right? They don't know who goes there. They don't know the curriculums. They don't know the teachers. Um, in one essence, it's a school just like any other school, but on the other side, you know, it's not. It's not. The elite schools exist for reasons. The elite schools. Why did the elite schools of the late 1800s, um, where the kind of multiple choice testing was introduced, because I got a background in education, so I've read about this stuff. So the elite schools of England introduced multiple choice testing in the late 1800s and found that although scores improved, students' knowledge didn't. And so the elite schools then rejected the multiple choice testing, and you got to give a coherent explanation, coherent answer. But they put it into the state schools. They put it into the state schools, so you could guess your way through. You could still guess your way through. So that it, it's interesting though, those subtle little differences. Did you know that in the elite schools, one of the things that happens is that nobody's forced to take any subject? And that if you want to take a subject, you can take a subject. If you don't want to take a subject, you don't have to take the subject, but you have to be able to explain. You have to be able to explain why you're taking something or why you're not taking something. And sometimes if you want to take something, you've got to really explain that you understand the value of the topic and the subject to the tutor or lecturer before they will let you on the course. It's a different way of thinking, and mindset matters. Mindset matters. Yeah. Don't forget my book's coming out in about 4 weeks. Leadership Mindset, fourth book in the series. All the books are free. They're online. They're on my websites. Each book contains 100 strategies to up your game and improve your personal and professional development. If you're not where you want to be, if you're not happy with what's happening around about you, these books will help you. Um, it's the condensed knowledge of my 20 years of work in personal development, and I, I just want to share it with the world, and hopefully it helps people get to the next level. I had a lot of nice feedback from the people who've actually read it, um, and people have, I say it, they haven't read all the books, okay? They usually read sections or chapters or parts or whatever I guide them towards. They read that part and they tend to say, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good idea. And then we try to implement just one thing, just get those dominoes falling so that change occurs, so that we have betterment, so that we have improvement, so that we move forward. Right. Well, so the Prime Minister's partner just had a kid. The funny thing is that she announced she was pregnant on the 29th of February, and she gave birth on the 29th of April. A very odd timeline going on there. It gets even stranger when you see the press and publicity photographs. You can go and have a look at those for yourself. Does Boris, and the other question is this child 5 or child 6? And does Boris even know himself? Such great leadership. Why do we even bother? Really, why do we even bother? Look, the leadership, as I've pointed out 100,000 times, leadership begins with yourself. You become a good leader in yourself. You lead yourself, and then people will follow you. Then you understand what is necessary and the differences that are necessary in individual people in order for them to progress. The different things you have to work on, the skills that you have to develop within you. The areas that you have to work on, you begin to understand, and you work on those, and you lead by example. And once you start leading by example, then you can become a true leader. Otherwise, it's just fake. It's just false. It's just image. It's just, at the end of the day, pointless. So there we are. In the space of 6 months, Boris Johnson got divorced, got engaged, had a baby, and nearly died, allegedly, from the coronavirus. Crazy, huh? Crazy. The Daily Mail US version pointed out that YouTube adds fact-checking panels to search results to prevent the spread of misinformation. Right, so once again, the authority is in control of the information. The authority gets to decide what is right and what is wrong. You don't get to decide at all. You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose. You don't even get to see the information most of the time. And then you're influenced, because if they tell you it's false before you read it, then you can have that in the back of your mind as well. So it's all a game. It's all a game. They need to let people be. Let people be. Let people grow. Let people decide for themselves. Let people make mistakes. Let people learn from the mistakes. And then we can all move forward. And live happily ever after, perhaps. Well, perhaps. So if you're following what I post online, then what you see next on Twitter is a really nice clip of the old harbor here from yesterday, where there was a really nice blue sky, very few clouds, and the color, the sort of aquamarine colors in the water was absolutely beautiful. And then the stark contrast of today, where although it was clear in the morning, the water seemed darker, and then as the clouds came over, it got colder, and everything changed very quickly. Didn't stop us getting wetsuits on and getting out into the water though. So got to have your fun, and lots of fun cleaning up everything and getting the sand off everything when we get back home as well. Still sweeping up the sand in the hallway. It's endless, never ends. If you live near a beach, you know what I'm talking about. This sand just gets in and on everything. It ends up in your dinner if you're not careful. You know, I like to get people to think about different concepts and ideas. I like to push people to engage in reality in a way that they're not challenged to normally. And I do this through little memes I put out. One of the memes I put out this morning was, meaning appears through the willingness to differentiate between what is and what ought to be. And what I mean by this is that just because something is, it doesn't mean that that's right. Yeah, there's very often a difference between what the right thing is and what you actually have to deal with is. And understanding that difference is the beginning of the road of knowledge, really. And also part of that road is the need to preserve volition as part of the mission. You have to preserve human willingness to have choice, really, is what I want to say, which is very important, because As Ann Coulter pointed out, Facebook has been deleting events. If Facebook doesn't like the event that you are promoting or you wish to be involved in or that you wish to promote, if Facebook doesn't like it, then they decide, I'm very sorry, you can't have your event. It doesn't matter how many people are interested in it. That's not interfering in society at all, is it? You advertise yourself as a free platform for people to go out and communicate, and that's the result. You 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 want to cut off communication, you want to cut off voices, you want to separate people, you want to silo people into groups, only give them certain kinds of information. That's not going to help. If you ever if you met someone and wondered why does that person think different from me when it's so obvious that they're wrong? Well, that's because Google and Yahoo and the other search engines and the social media platforms are channeling information that you reflect with, that you agree with to you. So you're only going to encounter the same opinions wherever you go. You're not going to be challenged to think about something that's completely different. You're not going to be challenged to go in a completely different direction. You're not going to be challenged by something you've never heard before. And that's not helping our critical thinking skills. That's not helping us at all as people. It's not helping humanity, and it's not helping when you delete events either. It's not helping at all. Let the people decide. And as Ann Coulter pointed out, they're no different from fascists at that point in time, unfortunately. Um, Moving on, Andrew Lawrence tweeted that some information from the news. Get it right, Tucker Carlson. What a great name. Only an American could have a name like that. Tucker Carlson, and only an American who's fronting the news could have a name like that, right? Anyway, he says there's no scientific justification for quarantine. We flattened the curve, the quirky curve, but quarantine had nothing to do with it. The virus isn't nearly as deadly as we thought it was. And this is a quote from his program. And my question is, could it be true? Well, what do you think? What do the statistics say? What do the numbers say? Do you believe the numbers? How do you find numbers that are real if you haven't collated it yourself? Look, if somebody else comes to you with their business and says, well, these are the numbers and for our business, you know that you still have to go to an independent auditor. You've got to send them into the other business if you want to buy that business, and you've got to get the independent auditor that you trust to check all the information is actually correct, right? What does that mean? That means trust but verify. Double check the facts, triple check the facts, try to get them from different sources. Really, really. And this, it's also interesting because let's go on a real tangent here, because of someone that I know online posted an article that a museum in Ecuador, I believe it was, has within the museum these skeletons of giants that are 7 meter tall, and he was posting it like, this totally crazy, or what is it? So it doesn't take long to search and verify and find trusted sources on the internet, and there's a huge amount of information that is actually true. That these were actually at some point in human history real people that were very large and lived in certain places in the world. I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, we have to realize in essence that history is both lost or written by the winners, and so we don't know a lot of what happened and went on. And that's by design. Do you think the library at Alexandria which once contained a copy of every known text in the world? The library at Alexandria once contained a copy of every known text in the world. That is an incredible resource. That's an incredible source of knowledge. Not only, and of course it burned, right? You think that was by accident that it burned? Like somebody was trying to rewrite everything. Now the thing that the intelligent thing that the library did was copy the documents. And it's the first thing it did when it got a document was copy it, so that copies of everything. Whoever designed that was a genius. And what they did was send the copies out to other places in order to be preserved in case anything happened at the source. Absolute genius. And so some copies were sent to the Middle East in certain places there, and that's why we have the texts that we have today, because they were thought to be gone. Well, they weren't even thought to be gone because people didn't think about it because they didn't know about it. And it wasn't until people began to travel like 300, 400 years ago and be able to get to some part of the world and get back and share information about what was where and how things worked that we actually began to learn much more about the history of North Africa, the history of Southern Europe, and the texts and the writings about the philosophers that existed, about the history of medicine from that part of the world. Crazy, huh? We lost. We didn't even know that this existed, and it was preserved in the Middle East. A lot of European history was preserved in the Middle East. It's wild, and look what we've done to that part of the world. Look at the tragedy that we've created, just because government won't listen to people. The people know what's right. The people know the right thing to do in general. I mean, you can look around and say, "Oh my God, we've been dumbed down. It was stupid," or whatever. But that gut instinct is still there. It's still there in society. There's still a voice in the back of our head that stops us doing the wrong thing in general. It's there. It's there. We also have social pressure as well, which is very powerful in that area. But it's interesting the amount of history that we've lost. If you want to dive down, I don't go down rabbit holes because they might be foxholes, right? I don't go there at all, but I know other people love to. There's a book, I think it's Forgotten Worlds by Max Egan, a great book. Start there. Graham Hancock has a number of great books. I think Fingerprints of the Gods, and there's also a really, really old book that was a precursor to Fingerprints of the Gods, which was written about 30 years ago. I think it was called Chariots of the Gods. I believe the writer was Robert Charot, I think. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because there's a lot. And I'm just talking about what I know from my small experience. Then you go to other countries and you find that they've got writers and they've got historians. And look at that guy, that one guy in where was it? Southern Europe, where he discovered that the mountains were not mountains; they were actually pyramids. I think it was that country that was formed. Is it Southern Croatia? Maybe it was back when it was definitely part of that Yugoslavia area before they broke it all up. Kind of Montenegro and other places. Somewhere around there. Darn it, can't quite remember where it is right now. But yeah, so this guy's like, "Oh, we've seen these," because it's only when we like had planes and we could fly over the land and we could look down that we actually realized, oh look, there's things that we haven't seen before. There's a wall under the ground, and now we got like ground penetrating radar. You can see what's under the ground. The technology has opened so many doors for us. It's wild. So yeah, they had these pictures, these satellite pictures, and this guy's like, "Oh, this kind of looks like this. Yeah, it's kind of a bit more geometric than sort of nature would usually have it." And lo and behold, the hills were actually pyramids, and they were all interconnected in this giant network in the south of Europe. It's really, really crazy. And I suggest that if it's there, that it's probably in more places as well. We just have to look for it. We just have to search for it. And even in and the interesting thing about that is I was looking at these pictures from Southern America where people built towns on hills naturally, as they built the castle on the top and the houses around about it for protection. And what they discovered was that a lot of these hills were actually pyramids there as well. So who built the pyramids? Who knows? Lost history. Lost history, and we're still, and it's almost, we're, as we go forwards, we're writing backwards because we begin then to understand more about what was there. Like, oh, the pyramids were built at this point in time. Well, no, actually, they were built thousands of years ago. Yes, but how many thousand? Well, they were built 5,000 years ago because whatever. And then it's like, oh no, they were built 8,000 years ago, and then 10, and then 15, and we don't really know. Yeah, we think we do. There's a lot of conjecture. There's a lot of honest mistakes that we make as well. And we make the best decision that we can based on the knowledge we have at that time. And if that knowledge then gets updated, then we got to update our decisions as well. I mean, it's just what educated people do. They realize that information changes situations. It's so crazy it can even change the past because you learn something new and that sheds new light on what was and you begin to realize, yeah, like so many adults do about their childhood. Because kids normalize everything. They think that because they have that experience, everybody has that experience, or almost everybody has that experience, and it's normal. But there's such a great variety of experiences and possibilities, and we tend to get limited by the framework of beliefs that our family live within. Um, Interesting conundrum to try to solve. Interesting conundrum. Anyway, moving on. Whitney Webb on Twitter posted that all of the social media groups, all of the social media applications, everything, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever you rock, all of these programs spy on you. It's not just one particular country. Globalism and the rise of corporations has seen these kind of invisible governments which are transitory. Some corporations are bigger than countries. Crazy. And as a result, they're more powerful than countries. And as a result, people can move around. It's crazy. That's why having your individual country and being able to protect your borders is important. We see that now. We see that now more than ever. That protecting your borders and your boundaries is so important, and that we need to have these borders and boundaries. It's almost like we're being taught a lesson that we still don't get. It's almost like that. Yeah. So, yeah, and there's all these different intelligence agencies, and they're all interconnected, and they're all stealing data, and the window works both ways. You get it. They all do it. The only problem with the big companies is they don't like their competition. They want it all to themselves. So there's probably not any one system that's really that much safer than all the others. But it's worth thinking about. It's worth encrypting your communication with people. Just doesn't matter if you've got nothing to hide. Yeah, it's just worth doing it, right? Do you want people opening the mail that you send through traditional mail? Do you want people doing that? I don't know. There's an argument for and against, right? There's an argument for and against. And so, moving on, the Babylon Bee on Twitter posted, "It's so inspiring. Celebrities spell out, 'We're all in this together,' with their yachts." Yeah, there was a picture of an insane picture of a group of rich celebrities who actually parked their yachts in a way that spelt, "We're all in this together." They're so obviously not. I mean, the fact that you were able to go out and park your yacht is not the typical problem that the average person has to deal with right now. They're so out of touch. They're out of touch and I'm out of my head trying to understand how they ever got so far. Not all of them, right? No, you do find reason at certain points in time from here to there. But maybe they're selected because well, they have a certain specific point of view. Oh, maybe they're selected because they know the right people. Maybe they're selected because they've got a certain amount of talent. Can't ignore talent, right? Oh, why is Brad Pitt paid so much? Well, because he's created that value for himself. He's created that wealth for himself, that worth of himself through the work that he's done. It's crazy, but it's true. He wouldn't be paid so much if he wasn't able to create some level of value. That's for sure. Mike Cernovich tweeted that we had a test run for pandemic preparation and realized all levels of government are incompetent. Isn't that just cut through the mustard? Right? So right, so true, spot on. That if we actually had a real problem, our governments would be completely incompetent in trying to solve it. They would either underreact or overreact. Just wrong. They're wrong. They're wrong. They got it wrong. Subtext, start prepping. Get together in your community and realize what you need to do right now, because if the SHA can't spell, if the SHIT hits the FAN, and we're waiting for someone else to come and save us, there is no Superman, no Superwoman, they're super confused, whatever. Yeah, what else? A couple of other little points. Dinesh D'Souza pointed out that everyone's blaming Trump. The man appears to be bulletproof, but no one is bulletproof. JFK proved that. But he pointed out, do you blame Woodrow Wilson for the casualties of the Spanish flu epidemic? Do you blame FDR for the American casualties of World War II? I'm trying to grasp on the principle of moral accounting being applied here. When are people going to stop blaming Trump for every death? I don't know. I guess they're not going to stop. I guess they're never going to stop because certain groups of society just seek to escalate. And if they lose, they escalate again. And if they lose, they escalate again. What was that Tom Petty song? And won't back down. Won't back down. Yep. Anyway, those were some points from Twitter. I didn't even get to Facebook. There's so much great stuff going on in and around stories on Facebook today. So much deep insight. I just don't have time. Don't have time to get through it all because I've got to talk about golf and relate stories from my past that maybe seem inconsequential to you, but I don't know. Maybe one day the bell will ring and the conversation will be remembered. I don't know. My name's G, also known as Graham William Hendry. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I got to talk about LinkedIn someday as well. That's a very bizarre platform. Instagram, you can find the Academy of Language Therapy and Life Coaching, YouTube, and on other places. Send me articles, get in touch with me, open up a conversation. Let's get the communication going about how we can make the future bigger, better, brighter, bolder for everyone on this planet. Yeah, let's get a conversation going. Let's do good things, and let's highlight good things done by good people. So there we are. Thank you very much for tuning in. Wherever you are, I wish you an absolutely fantastic day. If it's morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. Stay cool. Look after yourself. Look after your friends, and tell the ones you love that you love them. Speak to you soon. Take care.